Welcome to Dorking Out. My name is Sonia Mansfield, and I'd ruin your life to win a $1 bet. Joining me is my podcasting sister from another mister and the co-host of Dorking Out, Margo D. Hello, my friend.
Hello, my friend. Looking good, Sonia.
Your accents are mwah. Chef's kiss.
And then you say, feeling good, Margo.
Feeling
my sister and I do
good.
that all the My sister and I do that all the time.
That's so funny. We are dorking out about 1983's Trading Places. It's not Trading Spaces, which I keep referring to it around this house. It's Trading Places. And it is directed by John Landis, creep, and starring Dan Aykroyd, Eddie Murphy, Jamie Lee Curtis, Ralph Bellamy, Don Amici, Paul Gleason. Oh, Paul Gleason. You fucking so good at playing creeps. And Denholm Elliott, who
Denim.
Really?
Mm-hmm. You're supposed Denim. I think it's Denim Elliott.
All right. Well, he's one of
or
those.
Say Denholm, whatever. What if it's right?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Whatever. He's one of those actors that when I see him, I was like, hey, it's that guy. And then I don't know his name and clearly don't know how to pronounce it. Margo, did you see Trading Places in the theater?
Oh, hell no. It was an R-rated movie. But I have a story.
I want to hear it.
They filmed this between Christmas of 82 and March of 83. I checked the IMDb notes. My family, we were living in Philly at the time.
Ooh.
And we were there when they were filming the scene where Ralph Bellamy and Don Amici have Eddie Murphy in the back of the car, and they're driving around. So my parents were like, oh, they're filming a movie. And then my brother and I, Joe and I, were crazy because it's an Eddie Murphy movie. Oh my God, there's Eddie Murphy. And we grabbed our siblings. And my youngest brother, John, just jumped up and waved at him. And Eddie Murphy waved at the back. And then John looked at him and goes, oh, is he black? He didn't know who Eddie Murphy was. Like, Joe and I were freaking out. It's Eddie Murphy.
Did he?
But anyway.
That's so funny. He didn't know who he was at all. He was like, Eddie Money? No, it's Eddie Money.
Eddie Money. John was like 6 or 7 at the time. Joe and I would sneak up to watch Saturday Night Live because Eddie Murphy was a big deal.
Yeah, he was a huge deal.
He was a big star at this time. But anyway, I was there when they were filming. I was on the street with a lot of other people.
That's awesome. Yeah, Eddie Murphy was like not a big movie star at the time, but like he was a sensation on SNL because he was funny as shit on that show. So funny.
He certainly was. Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit, I think, in one of our old episodes. I actually saw Trading Places in the theater, so I would have been 12. I saw it in the theater in a double feature with Risky Business with my mom, who clearly didn't give a shit about ratings. Maybe just really wanted to see those movies herself and didn't want to go alone, so she brought me. And I'm sure a lot of this movie went over my head, and I left the movie thinking how much I liked Eddie Murphy, and there was a ton of boobs. That's probably what I was thinking when I left. And that's one of the things, like, this movie came out in 1983, and it is so 1983. There is all kinds of unnecessary, like, boob shots, like women taking their tops off for no reason and like dancing, and I'm like, what's happening? Who does that?
Nobody has a bra.
Nobody has a bra. It's very 80s that way. And there's definitely some other things that are problematic. And so if, there's a couple, like, they drop some gay slurs. There's the N-word is used at one point, but it is used because the person is an awful racist. That's the point. But there's a lot of problematic stuff in it. So if that kind of stuff takes you out of a movie and ruins it for you, maybe Trading Places isn't for you. But how did this rewatch work for you? Did you still think it was funny?
I laughed out loud several times. I thought it was fucking hilarious. I mean, there's sometimes I laughed and I'm like, oh God, because sometimes Eddie Murphy would get a laugh, and he did the one where he's like sexually harassing a woman on the street.
What the? I know.
But he's grabbing her coat, and then he goes, "Come on, we could be loved," all that stuff. And then it was just funny enough as it was. And they had just say, "Bitch." I'm like, "Ooh, you didn't have to," but like at
Yeah,
the
it was like
time,
a little too
that would have
far.
been the funny part. Yeah, it was like a little bit too far. Like, I'm sorry, and also Dan Aykroyd is so cute in this movie.
He is really cute. He's
Oh my god, is he doable?
you forget, like, once again, like, Eddie Murphy was not a big movie star at the time, and Dan Aykroyd wasn't really a movie star either. Like, he was, he had done like Blues Brothers and things like that. He was like a supporting person. He was like
Mm-hmm.
part of a duo, basically. He wasn't like a leading man by any means. Like, nobody was, I guess, in this movie. Um, but he looked very handsome in this movie. He plays a real pompous
Ah,
ass, but he's very handsome.
he's very cute. And the woman who plays his girlfriend is like the perfect 80s preppy
Oh
girlfriend.
my gosh. Kristen,
Penelope.
yeah, her name is Penelope Witherspoon in the movie, and it's Kristen Holby. I looked that up. Um, yeah,
She had a bra.
she because she's proper.
Right. She's a lady.
Ladies wear bras. That's why Jamie Lee Curtis doesn't wear a bra in the movie. She's not a proper lady. If you haven't seen Trading Places, the whole idea of the movie is these two millionaire brothers, Randolph and Mortimer Duke, so it's Don Ameche and Ralph Bellamy, make a bet that if it's the idea of like nature versus nurture, hereditary
Mm-hmm.
versus environment. So if they take Dan Aykroyd out of his cushy job and kind of destroy his life and give it all to Eddie Murphy, like, will Eddie Murphy thrive, and will Dan Aykroyd then like kind of dissolve into like a life of crime? And they do this bet for $1. $1. I guess it's really more bragging rights at this point. $1.
Yeah.
They're so cheap.
You
They're
could,
so cheap. But it is an
there's
interesting thing, like the idea of nature versus nurture, and I think it's very interesting. What did you think when you first saw it? Were you like, what did you think of the bet? Let me just say that.
well, I was too young to really understand a lot of the stuff. I mean, that was just what the plot was. I didn't know who Don Ameche was or about Ralph Bellamy. I thought they
Mm-mm.
were funny, but I thought Dan Aykroyd was so cute. And I love that they shot it in Philly, which it just makes a great backdrop for the movie. But I do think it's an interesting concept, but I think a lot of it does. It was supposed to be Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder,
Totally makes
and
sense.
yeah, they made a lot of movies together. They were very funny, and that would have been funny too. But a lot of this, you get the idea that Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy are improvising
Mm-hmm.
and throwing their own kind of ideas in there, and that really sells it because they're not. I mean, Dan Aykroyd, especially, not like his character's not that likable because he's so spoiled and
Yes.
obnoxious. But Dan Aykroyd just does like the nose in the air and this arrogance and all of this attitude about himself that it's funny. Like he's just so
Yeah.
pompous that it's funny. And even when he's downtrodden and his girlfriend Ophelia, is a sex worker and he needs to like leave so she can have somebody come over. He's very good at like, okay, you got it. This is business, whatever.
Yeah.
There's a part of him that's still regal,
Mm-hmm. That's
except when
true.
he's Santa Claus, and he's my favorite Santa Claus in a movie for sure.
It's so fun. There's a part where like he's wearing this dirty, gross Santa outfit, and he's crashing like a party where the Duke brothers and Eddie Murphy's at. And he takes all this food and he like stashes it in his gross Santa costume, and he gets on a bus and he's riding the
Takes fish out.
and he like takes, yeah, it's a fish, right?
He just
Like,
stuffs a thing of fish, like salmon or whatever, and shoved it into the suit, and then just takes it and start eating it on the bus.
yeah, he like
On
pulls,
the SEPTA bus.
yeah,
Oh,
he like pulls this thing out of his gross Santa suit and he starts eating it. And I wrote in my notes, I'm like, that still wouldn't crack the top 5 like grossest things I've seen on public transportation. I'm like, oh, those poor people. And then it's just so funny. Like he gets off the bus, and at this point he's just totally broken, and like a dog runs up and like pees on him, like just to like hammer home the point that he's such a loser. And it starts raining on him and he tries to kill himself and the gun doesn't work. And, you know, it's just like anything that can go wrong is going wrong for this dude. But watching it now, like through a modern lens, it's interesting to me, the idea of, because it really is like the idea of white privilege. And
oh my God, yes.
And you know, at the time, like when I saw it, it really wouldn't have occurred to me because I was 12, and it probably wouldn't have occurred to me because I was a 12-year-old white girl. But now watching it as an adult, I'm like, this is just, yeah, it's all about like once they strip away all of his white privilege and give it to Eddie Murphy, how quickly Eddie Murphy rises to the top. Like within 2 days, he's like a commodities expert. And like,
well, okay, so
yeah, go ahead.
We should say that like a part of it is that so they make their money over commodities, and they in their world, people trade pork bellies and frozen orange.
Yeah, frozen orange juice. Yeah,
it's absurd, which is just crazy. But that's what Eddie, like you said, Eddie Murphy learns how to do it like right away, and he's the best at it in the company. They forget about Dan Aykroyd really quickly in his world. Like they are able to take away his identity and everything about him. Toot sweet. Like there's no, which is, I mean, that's the way the movie should be, because you just want to get the plot going.
Yeah, just get going.
You just want to see Eddie Murphy get rich and then have fun being rich. But like Eddie Murphy, like he's in the house and he's like playing with the juggling the stuff, and then he breaks the vase, and then he has people come over for a party, and he's all into it until people get too rowdy. And like you said, all of a sudden women were just taking their tops off for no reason.
So
just
weird.
It's also Christmas time, by the way. It's freezing, and like everyone's wearing these little disco tops, and then he all of a sudden becomes more pompous because he has this money. So yeah, and then so what do you think of we didn't even mention, like we just sort of mentioned, what do you think of like Jamie Lee Curtis?
I actually really, she was kind of my favorite part of the whole movie.
Me too.
Because she's not, I think when people talk about her, first of all, she was really known as like a scream queen at this point. She was known for like Halloween and Halloween 2 and, you know, prom night. Yeah, stuff like that. Like comedy was not her thing. Like now we all know Jamie Lee Curtis is fucking rad and she can do whatever she wants. But back in the day, it was not known. So this was like kind of one of her first comedies. I think she's really, really funny in it, and I super love her. And I also love that her character's really smart. Like, she is a sex worker, but she's doing it not because she's been like abused or because she's into drugs or whatever. Like she's doing it simply to make money, and she's like saving all that money with the idea that she could retire in a couple of years. And I was like, it's sex positive, I guess, like a sex positive portrayal that you don't see a lot.
It sort of is. I mean, and it's so funny because she says, "I've saved $40,000." I'm like, "That's it? You're not gonna get." That's like, you got more on your back, years on your back. But okay, in her world, yes, that's what it is. But they have her like in the 80s, especially when in the early parts of like Law and Order in the early years, like every time there's a prostitute, it's a super short dress, fake fur jacket, high heels. Like that's, you know, that just was the outfit, and that's what she wears. I always get upset when Louis, by the way, is played by Dan Aykroyd, when Louis gets out of jail and she plays like a drug addicted prostitute.
Yeah.
Because Paul Gleason pays her to do that. But then Ophelia like takes him in right away, and she's like, she has boundaries, but she does care for him right away.
Yeah. Well, because she's a nice person. Like on top of it, I think she's pretty smart. But she's also a good person, and she can see that this is someone who's not going to do well if she doesn't take him in. So she takes him in, which I think is another thing that's really, really awesome about that character. I like her very much in this movie. And I love that you mentioned Paul Gleason, because this is like a couple of years before he's raiding Barry Manilow's wardrobe in The Breakfast Club. And he's such a fucking prick. He's just such a prick. He's so good at playing that kind of character, and I don't even know if I understand everything that's going on in this movie. There's a there's a lot of stuff about like buying high and selling low or vice versa. I don't know. That shit's beyond me. But there is a whole thing where like they're getting on a train, they're trying to like swap out a briefcase, and like Paul Gleason's got the briefcase. Once again, I don't really understand all of it. Not that I have to. But then for some reason there's a bunch of people on the train who are wearing Halloween costumes, so they dress up Paul Gleason as like a gorilla, and there's a gorilla on the train, so then they like put Paul Gleason in with the gorilla. and
that's your funny Jim Belushi performance, by the way. Like, if you're looking for the reason why Jim Belushi has a career now, I think he's fucking hilarious. I love it when he comes back in his underwear, because look what happened to me!
Look what happened! It's just another weird thing in this movie. Okay, so we have random blackface, the occasional dropping of gay slurs and the N-word,
yes,
unnecessary tits, and a scene where they put Paul Gleason in a gorilla costume, put him in the cage with a gorilla, and the gorilla rapes him. It's like, what the fuck is this movie? And it's like, oh, like, it's such a weird movie.
So Paul Gleason has the report. Oh, he will have the report for the Frozen Orange Juice Council. And so the Duke brothers have their money in this. So like they're going to know what the report, it's in the report. And that's going to change the stocks. And I love that he's on a payphone outside and it's great. And he's talking to them. And then a woman's just standing there to use the payphone. He just goes, excuse me, fuck off. It's so deadpan, but I always crack up at that scene. Like, he's such a dick.
He's such a dick.
But Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd combine their talents, and they're gonna like combine their money, and they're gonna go back. And in one day, they're able to get not only all the money they want, but they wipe out the Duke brothers.
Yeah, it happens. It happens in record time. It's there is like a really good scene where the Duke brothers, which now I was like, oh, like from Dukes of Hazzard, the Duke boys explain the commodities market to Eddie Murphy's character, and they like have this kind of like different foods set out, and they're like explaining like, you know, you buy it at this price and sell it at this price, and we get a cut no matter what, blah blah blah. And he says, sounds to me like you guys are a couple of bookies. And I was like, yeah. It's like, it just boils it. Yeah, it boils it down to like the very essence of what that job is. Like, yeah, they're a couple of bookies.
The best part of that scene is, this is why Eddie Murphy was a movie star, is that they're like, there's this wheat, like you would make bread, like for toast. There are pork bellies, like for bacon, like for a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich. And Eddie Murphy just quickly looks into the camera like, are you fucking kidding me? It's the best.
He's such a movie star.
He is.
This was the same year.
He's like 20?
Yeah, it's like
21?
The same year's 48 Hours.
Yeah.
And I think he's really, really good in this. I thought he was really, really good in 48 Hours. I would love to watch it again because it's been a long time.
We need to do that movie.
Yeah, and he's a fucking movie star. He is
in
like
the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was it. Like, you would go to see an Eddie Murphy movie.
Yeah.
And you went to laugh because you knew no matter, and Beverly Hills Cop, I think, is his funniest. I love that movie. I think he's really fun, but he's really good in here. He's a guy that's like working the streets. He pretends he's a Vietnam veteran.
Hey, lady, like once you're with a guy who has no legs, you don't go back. What?
And the cops grab him and goes, I got my feet, I got my sight back. That's a miracle. He's so hilarious, because that would not work with like a half-assed actor. Like, that wouldn't work at all. It works because it's Eddie Murphy. His voice and everything is what makes it work. And this just proves he's a movie star.
Such a movie. There's also a point where like all the cops are chasing him and they throw him on the ground and point like a million guns in his face. And he's like, is there a problem, officer? Like, just the delivery is so fucking funny. He's just funny as shit. And I think what Beverly Hills Cop would have been the following year or the year after. I forget what year, but
he had a movie like every year for a while.
Yeah. And
yeah,
Beverly Hills Cop made him like the biggest star on the planet. Like that movie's been on our list since the beginning. We will get to it eventually. Cuz I still quote that movie almost daily. Like, you're not going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe. Like,
hey man, I'm not gonna fall for the banana in the tailpipe. We have to talk about that one day. I said that wrong. I'm sorry. I'm drinking wine. But no, he's very, very funny. He looks great. He looks great in all the suits. He's very believable in every scene that he's in. He holds his own with like Don Ameche and
for
Ralph Bellamy,
sure,
which is saying something. And Dan Aykroyd, who was a comedian for 10, 15 years at that point.
Yes.
So, but they have great chemistry.
They do. They really do. And I love there's just like these little things. Like there's a part where Eddie Murphy's character Billy Ray Valentine, such a movie name, overhears what the brothers have been planning. Like the idea that they have destroyed Dan Aykroyd's life and elevated Eddie Murphy, and they've done it for $1. But that's at some point where like the Don Ameche character drops the N-bomb. Like, I'm not going to let this N-word run our company. And he's like, of course we're not. That would be ridiculous. You know, that sort of thing. And the look on his face is like, how fucked up it is. Like, that they would use that word, that they don't really believe in him, that even though he's actually doing a really good job, they're still going to get rid of him just because he's black. Like, there's some like serious stuff going on in that scene, I think. And it's actually it's played for laughs mostly because he's like smoking pot and like hiding in the bathroom. And
well, so Dan Aykroyd dresses as Santa Claus, gets really drunk, and then crashes the office Christmas party. And his whole plan is he's going to put drugs into Billy Ray Valentine's desk. And then Billy Ray calls the cops, and that's when they found out Billy Ray kind of turned from one thing to another thing. And as he's throwing away the drugs, he puts the joints in his jacket.
Yeah.
And that's the next scene. He's in the bathroom smoking a joint.
So it starts as like a funny scene, like where it's like, yeah, you've taken the man off the street, but you can't take the street out of the man, or something, you know, some bullshit like that. And he's smoking his pot. But then there's like this very serious, it to me, and to I think most modern audiences, when somebody says the N-word, it's shit gets real. Like in that scene. So yeah. I feel like that scene hits a little bit different now than it did back then. Because at the time, like stuff like that just happened more often in movies. But that's when Billy Ray says, it occurs to me that the best way to hurt rich people is to turn them into poor people, which is very true. So he partners up with Dan Aykroyd and Jamie Lee Curtis and the butler and Coleman.
Yes.
And I'm so happy to see him there because you can tell like he's conflicted. He doesn't want to be a part of it, but he works for the Dukes, so he feels like he has to. But then he cares enough to join their plot. And what was I gonna say? Oh, so they all dress. Oh, yeah. Then they all dress up as these fucking stupid stereotypes. I don't even know what that was. What were they thinking?
It doesn't make any sense. So, like, Billy Ray is like a Jamaican or a guy from, where is he from? But I do this all the time when I get excited. I'm like, we are moving. Like, with, like the movie with the, like, when I get excited about, or thank you for correcting my English.
Yeah.
He's an exchange student. Paul Gleason's in the van. I'm sorry, in the train car. Jamie Lee Curtis is supposed to play a German woman, but she couldn't do a German accent, so she does a Swedish accent.
Yeah, and I just love that scene.
And Dan Aykroyd's in blackface, which is really bad.
Very problematic.
Is a Jamaican singer, and then Denham Elliott is an Irish priest who's drunk.
And when it's just Eddie Murphy and Paul Gleason, that was funny. And then they throw in Coleman, and Coleman's like, you know, what does he say? Alcohol is like religion, like everything in moderation or something like that, even though he's like a priest. And then here comes Jamie Lee Curtis, and she's wearing this like sexy lederhosen, but then she has a Swedish accent. And Coleman's like, but you're wearing lederhosen. And she's like, I'm Swedish. Like, And then once Dan
And the whole thing
Aykroyd,
is they're just taking the suitcase. That's all they're doing.
yeah,
But they have to wear these crazy outfits.
they don't have to do any of the things they're doing to get this briefcase. And the idea that they think it's going to work is comical to me because it's so bananas. And then here comes Dan Aykroyd in blackface. I don't know who he thinks he's fooling. And which, by the way, like it was just something that it happened in movies in the 80s. Stir Crazy came out, what, a year or two before. That was Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor, and it's the same thing. It's like almost the same thing with the
No, there was blackface.
Yeah.
I know, it's weird because in movies they used it, but on TV shows that we watched when we were kids, they told us it was bad and wrong, but it was still used as a joke. I mean, it's always funny. But this is, like I said, it's like, what, 35 plus almost 40 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Things
so
were different.
when you watch it, like you have to remember the time it was made. And I mean, it takes me out of it personally, but I still think there's parts of that scene that are really funny. Mainly Jamie Lee Curtis as their really terrible Swedish accent.
I think I like anywhere Pump said it just goes, Merry New Year! Happy New Year. That's what we say in America. Thank you for correcting my English. I can tell you, I quote this shit all the time.
You're so funny. Yeah, and then that's when they're also on the train is like Jim Belushi and all of his party people, and I don't know why they're wearing costumes, but they are. And there's a real ape there, and then we also have Al Franken and Tom Davis. And you know, before Al Franken was a senator and, you know, I guess kind of a creep, Al Franken's a funny dude, and I thought they were
Franken and Davis were good.
Yeah, and they have like such a funny like rapport between the two of them. It just, I love the scene where they're drinking and they're like, I dressed up as a luggage carrier. And then, like, Tom Davis is like, imagine my embarrassment when someone else was dressed up as a luggage carrier. Like, just the way they talk about it was cracking me up. I like that part. I don't know if I like gorilla rape, but that's cool. Like, you know, that's, if that makes other people laugh, that's fine.
It at the time it made me laugh when I was a kid.
Oh, for sure. By the way, 12-year-old Sonia, that was probably the only thing I remembered about the movie. It was like boobs and gorilla rape. And then the guy he had sex with a gorilla. It's hilarious.
But it goes from that to the train, and then they go to New York City, and they have the crop reports. They know what's going to happen. So they know when they're going to buy and when they're going to sell. And they're on the floor at the New York Stock Exchange. And I got to go once, but this was a few years ago, and it's so different now. You could hear a pin drop. It's
really?
so quiet.
What?
Yeah, I was totally bummed out.
Oh.
They're like, yeah, it's not like that anymore. It's all computerized. Like, nobody yells. Nobody does that
Boring.
stuff. I'm like, oh. I know, that's what I was like. Can't we just... I said, what about Trading Places? They're looking at me like, yeah, it was over 30 years ago, dum-dum. Like, things change.
Yeah. I'm still not 100% sure I understand what they were doing in that scene, to be honest. With the, like, buying and selling. And I understand when, like...
gestures.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know what's happening, but I could tell that, like, it was good for our good guys. I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
In that way. But not the ins and outs.
But they make their money in record time. They get all their money and then some. And then the Duke brothers, like, they're trying to get their money back and they can't. And I forget if it's Mortimer or the other one, but he passes out.
Yeah. Like
a heart attack, because they lose everything. They lose their seat on the board and everything like that. And then Don Amici goes, don't worry. He's like, oh, sir, your brother goes, oh, fuck him. Don Amici apparently was furious. He didn't want to say the curse word. He was really apologetic.
Don Amici.
So he said, I know. He said, I'm giving you one take and make it work. And they did.
Oh, this was before Cocoon and all that. So it was before his, like, career revival. And by the way, if you don't know who Richard Bellamy is, like, any old movie that you watch... Ooh, your ride's here, Margo.
I don't... You know what they're doing? Is they're selling Christmas trees across the street.
Oh! Get me one.
So
send it my way.
Yeah. Yeah.
if you watch any like old black and white romantic comedy, if there's somebody awesome that you want your leading lady to be with, the Jimmy Stewart, the Cary Grant, the Robert Mitchum, whatever, and then there's the other guy. Robert Bellamy probably played the other guy. That was his thing.
And Don Aykroyd was like a song and dance guy.
Yeah.
And hadn't worked in years and didn't need to. He had money, but they had to. But I think they're like brilliant casting.
They're so good. They really are so good. And of course, they show up in Coming to America, which I'm sure you remember as
sure.
as two homeless dudes that Eddie Murphy gives money to. And I think that's a nice little touch. I mean, what do you think about John Landis?
Oh, I don't like him at all because he killed three people, excuse me, two of them children.
Yeah. I think, that's how I feel too. Fuck John Landis.
He was
creep.
Directing a segment of, it was Twilight Zone, the movie. And it was Vic Morrow, was that his name?
Yeah.
He plays a guy that's going back to Vietnam. He was a Vietnam veteran, and he's like reliving something in his life, and he's carrying these two kids. And it was an indoor shot, and there was a helicopter, and the helicopter killed him and the two kids. And it was filming after midnight, and the kids were immigrants, or their parents were. It was like broke all these child labor laws. It was ridiculous. And he wanted Eddie Murphy to be a character witness at his trial, and Eddie Murphy wouldn't do it. And Eddie Murphy's like, "No, you killed people. Like, I'm not. That's my reputation too if I go in there."
Yeah.
And so they had a rift between them, and I'm on Team Eddie for that.
Me too. I think John Landis is a creep.
His son is too. We talk about him.
Yeah, we did a whole episode of What a Creep about his son, and we definitely got into like a conversation about that situation on the Twilight Zone movie and John Landis. But also on a personal note, my husband told me a story about how when he worked as a studio, he was a tour guide for Universal Studios, and you could like wave, like celebrities would wave if they wanted to be like called out or whatever. And John Landis would just stand there and he wouldn't wave. And he would just stand there and wait for you to like call him out against his wishes or whatever, and then he would have you fired. That was his whole thing. He would like taunt these studio tour guides like by standing there, but he wouldn't wave. So then people would ask like, "Who is that? Is that John Landis or blah blah blah?" And if you even like said like, "Yes, that is John Landis," then you get fired. He's an asshole.
Fuck him.
Seriously, he's a fucking prick.
That's cool.
Fuck John Landis and his gross son. Anyway, we're not talking about John Landis. We're talking about Trading Places. So it was after this movie came out, Paramount signed Eddie Murphy to a $25 million 5-picture deal. It was like one of the biggest deals ever with an actor. Like it was a big deal when there was a time where like, oh God, who was it? Like Jim Carrey got like a huge like $20 million for like one picture. And this is like Eddie Murphy, $25 million for 5. So there's just a time where they would get this kind of dough.
Well, he would bring in people. I would go see an Eddie Murphy movie. You just had to tell me it was Eddie Murphy and it was a comedy. I was there.
Yeah, even ones that weren't good, like Golden Child, that wasn't good.
Oh God, that movie's terrible.
I'm like, he made a bunch of stinkers. I mean, now he's kind of known for making some stinkers, like Norbit and shit like that. Like, but before that, you had Beverly Hills Cop, which I loved. So this movie was super huge. It made a shit ton of money.
How much did it make?
It made, I'm looking it up. Okay, so it made almost $100 million, which doesn't seem like anything now, but was a really big deal at the time. And it was the 4th highest grossing movie of the year.
Wow.
Which is pretty crazy for like an adult comedy because it's rated R, not PG-13. It's R. And it was behind Flashdance, which we'd done an episode on, Terms of Endearment, and Return of the Jedi.
It's pretty big company. Yeah.
It's
And it was a big deal for Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, she became a big sex symbol after it.
absolutely rightfully so. She's hot.
Oh, she's smoking hot. She looks great in this movie.
She looks amazing, and I think this is the debut of that super short haircut that she always had in the 80s. Like when you see like Perfect, which we've also done an episode on. It's not good. It is not good, that movie. But she looks great. I love her.
She's a beautiful lady.
She is. Do you want to hear about some other movies from 1983?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we've had top 10 movies before, so I just picked some rando movies. 1983, A Christmas Story came out, which I love. I do watch every year. Class.
With Andrew McCarthy?
Yes. It's and Rob Lowe and Jacqueline Bisset. Is that right? I think.
Yeah, she's basically committing rape.
Yeah,
with her son's friend.
Yeah, awesome. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's comedy.
So sexy. Eddie and the Cruisers.
I love Eddie and the Cruisers. I really do.
I haven't seen it since like I was a kid. I watched it on cable, but my dad tells me that it's very, very good. He super loves that movie.
I do too. I'm with your dad.
Okay, your team dad. Flashdance, which I already mentioned. Mr. Mom.
I love Mr. Mom.
I remember.
I've seen that like 100 times.
I watched Mr. Mom a million times when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I loved it at the time. I wonder if I would still love it now, because it's like he's a dad who's learning how to take care of his kids. But
I think it holds up remarkably well. I think I saw it a few years ago, and I was shocked how well it stood up. Yeah.
All right, awesome, because I have a soft spot for that movie. The Outsiders.
Yep.
You did a book versus movie on that one, yeah?
Yeah. The movie doesn't really hold up that great. There's a couple of versions of it. There's a version that has I can't remember what the difference is, but there's two different versions, and there's one that's much better than the other. But it's still, when I was young, that was the movie. Like, you watched at slumber parties and shit like that. Like, that movie was everything. It doesn't hold up that well.
Oh, interesting. It was the movie that had, I mean, it had basically every straight girl's crush.
White girls.
Straight white girls, thank you. Straight white girls crushes. So, like, if you were like a Tom Cruise or an Emilio Estevez or
Rob Lowe in The Towel.
Yeah, Rob Lowe or Ralph Macchio, whatever. C. Thomas Howell, like whoever your crush was, they were probably in The Outsiders. And Patrick Swayze was in there too, right?
And Matt Dillon.
See?
Yeah.
There's something for all the straight white girls.
We're always being neglected, Sonia.
We're so overlooked. Also, 1983 was Silkwood.
Great movie.
I haven't seen that one in a long time, but I would like to revisit. Star 80.
That movie is messed up.
Movie's fucked up. I rewatched that movie for our true crime movies episode that we did a million years ago. And it's a really, really good movie, but it's fucked up. It's a fucked up movie, just FYI. I already mentioned Twilight Zone, the movie. And then the last one is Valley Girl, which we've also done an episode on, and we love Valley Girl. So good.
Oh, it's so good. Okay. So I was wondering that because I wanted to talk about some of the top songs of '83, and I'm like, we've talked about a bunch of these. That's right, because we've done these movies. So here are just a few. Bonnie Tyler, "Total Eclipse of the Heart."
That song is awesome. I love that song.
David Bowie, "China Girl." Is that racist now? Would that be considered?
That's another one where I'm like, I don't know if that's aged well, but at the time I super loved it.
I still sing along to it, like when it plays on the radio. But I was thinking about, is this wrong to... Oh, anyway. Journey, "Separate Ways." One of the best rock videos ever.
It's such a ridiculous video. But I do love that song.
It's a ridiculous song and video. Oh, they're great. But it's really stupid because it's the band and they're like playing, and they're playing like a keytar, like it's very 80s, their instruments and their haircuts. And sometimes they're playing and sometimes they're mimicking playing an instrument.
Yeah, and there's like
what was the point of that?
I don't know. It's like, sometimes they're playing, sometimes the instruments disappear. Yeah. And then there's like a woman walking in slow motion.
and she's wearing like the leather skirt and the heels with the thing, the seam up the back, and she's got the 80s hair. It just walks in between them for no reason.
Yeah, go to
it's
YouTube.
Great.
Go to YouTube and watch it. You won't be sorry. It's something to see.
And here's another one to see. Elton John, I'm Still Standing. I love that song.
I still love that song. I loved it.
Good song. The Tubes, She's a Beauty.
That's a good one too.
Great song. Bay Area band, right? They're from the Bay Area.
I believe that is correct.
And here's my last one from then. James Ingram, Yamo Be There.
Yamo Be There. The song is...
With Michael McDonald?
Yes. I have a friend who says that if God had a voice, it would be Michael McDonald's voice.
I totally concur.
It always makes me laugh when he says that.
Brothers.
He's got a voice.
Beautiful voice.
Very beautiful, very distinct. What else are you dorking out about, Margo?
My earpods. I'm sorry, you guys. If it sounds like I realize I sound like I'm futzing with them. I can't keep them in my ears. If you guys have any suggestions, please send them along.
Have you tried Staples?
Scrooged. I get that. I'm dorking out sad news. David Landers died. He played Squiggy, Lenny and Squiggy from Laverne and Shirley. He had MS. He's been battling that for about almost 25 years. I love Lenny and Squiggy so much.
Hello, girls.
Every time Lenny and Squiggy would burst into the bar, just say hello, and there was always a line just before that was really funny. And then they would come in, and they were just like big comedy heroes for me. I had their record. They had a record called Lenny and the Squigtones, and they did all these like 50s type of songs, and they made them really filthy. And it was just really, I really, really loved them. And I was checking on Twitter all the tributes, and it's just like, oh, it's so sad. Super loved Lenny and Squiggy, and he was really talented. He was great in. We talked about A League of Their Own.
Yes,
he was in that. Yeah, so. I just want to say R.I.P. to David Landers.
Yeah, that's a bummer. They were so fucking funny on Laverne and Shirley. I would get so excited whenever they would show up because I really loved them. But it was true. Like they were always like, "How could it get any worse?" And then like, "Hello, girls!" Like they show up like every time. I really like them. I'm really sad to hear that.
Whenever Schatz' Brewery did a talent show, like every year they had a talent show episode, and they would come out and sing, and they had songs like one was called "The Creature Without a Head," and it was just like one of them, their girlfriend, her head was melted in a nuclear accident, but they didn't care because she was stacked. I can't explain it. It's just really, really funny, and it was like I said, big part of my childhood was watching Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley. Yeah.
Oh, R.I.P.
Yeah. R.I.P. David Landers.
I have finally finished The Queen's Gambit.
Oh, what'd you think?
I loved it. I loved everything about it. It looks gorgeous. Like everything about it is gorgeous. Like the clothes, the hair, the sets, everything. It's just, I was like blown away by how amazing it looks. And I loved the lead, whose name I'm going to look up right this second. Anna Taylor-Joy as the lead.
She's wonderful.
She's
in the movie and
so amazing.
Everything. She's in every scene.
Yeah.
The whole movie depends on her. And sometimes she's just sitting there playing chess. Like that's all she's doing. And she's always believable. You always care about her. I totally get it.
It's so well done. Like, first of all, you could say like, well, chess is super boring. Like, I don't think chess is super boring. I think anything where there's like a little bit of competition, there is drama there that can be created. I think it does it really well. I mean, I don't even understand all the rules of chess because I'm a dummy. I don't know. Like, chess is not my jam. If we wanted to play Scrabble, I might be able to explain the rules. But chess, not my thing. That's fine. You don't have to be into chess to like The Queen's Gambit. It might help. You might appreciate it on a whole other level. But like, I think the movie's incredibly tense when it needs to be. I think she's amazing in it. And I think like I really, really, really cared about her. And when like things were not going right, or like it looks like she's going to lose, or she's making poor choices like we all do when we're young, I was very nervous for her, which is a sign of like a
Yeah.
good show for me. Like when I like when my hands like get up to my face and I'm like covering my mouth, or like, and I'm like, no, like that's good. That's good. And I just think The Queen's Gambit is so good. And there's all kinds of articles out there about like the clothes and the hair and
and
like
the music
and the music and the set design and the art direction and all these things. And I'm going to read all of it because it looks stupid beautiful, like every shot. It's really good. It's on Netflix.
It's why you need to get Netflix, because they do put their money behind some interesting shows like this.
Yeah.
This is something like HBO would have done years ago.
For sure. This 100% would have been an HBO thing. And I'm really glad that they didn't try to cram it into like a 2-hour movie. And I'm really glad that they didn't try to stretch it into like a regular TV series with like multiple seasons. Like this is a very good story with a beginning, middle, and end. And it's like exactly right, just the way it is. I really, really like that.
That's how like British television is.
Yes.
Like episodes, like seasons are only like 8 to 10, maybe 12 tops. It's America. They thought like we needed 20 or more.
Right.
And it's excessive. Yeah. I think I like it, but I binged that show. Like I just couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah. My husband does not let us binge. Like we watch one at a time. He's like, no, you got to savor it. And I was like, I totally get it. Like I agree with him on so many levels where I'm like, there's some shows that benefit from not binging, right? Like you live with the episode a little bit and think about it. But this is one of those ones where I was like, watch the next one? Should we watch the next one? And he's like, no. And I'm like, ah! Like, I want to watch the next one. Like, but I'm always glad I didn't just move right on to the next one, because there is a lot to process and think about. But it's so, so good. And we also finished the Great British Baking Show, the most recent season.
Yes.
And I mean, that's just, as always, a pleasure. And it's very exciting when like a person you really like wins. And the thing is, I always like everybody. But this is one from like
except Paul Hollywood.
Except for Paul Hollywood. Pretty much. I'm like, he's kind of my least favorite.
Does anybody like him?
Actually, I mean,
he's important to the show.
Yeah. I do have a friend, a gay friend, who says that he would watch a show where just Paul Hollywood eats donuts. And I was like, sure. I'm like, yeah, that's your jam. I get it. Like, he's got a bit of a silver fox thing going on for some people. I could see it, but he's not my type. But it's a really, really good season. And I saw that the new holiday ones are out now. So I'll be watching that.
Yeah, I was watching that today. They have some people from past seasons on one show, and then there's another season. I didn't get to watch it yet, but it's the cast from Derry Girls.
I saw that.
I was like, holy shit, I'm going to save that. I'm going to savor that one. Maybe like for next Friday or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a great, the show has just a great pattern to it. It always works.
It always works. And if you haven't watched Derry Girls on Netflix, we in this house are still only on season 1 because we get distracted by shiny new things. But the episodes we watch, the show is funny as shit. It's so funny, and everyone on it is so good. And when I saw that the second episode was them, I was like, I need to watch more Derry Girls, and then we can watch that episode. So
I think I'm going to do the same. I think I'm going to go back to Derry Girls for like a day and watch a bunch of episodes and then do it.
Good call. We'll check back in next week and see how far our progress is on Derry Girls. Margo, where can people find you on the internet?
You could find me on social media at Brooklyn Fit Chick, mostly for Twitter and Instagram. And my blog is brooklynfitchick.com.
And if you like the sound of our voices, we also co-host another podcast called What a Creep. We're having such a good time over there where we talk about creeps. And then we end every episode with someone who's not a creep. Please listen, enjoy. We have a private Facebook group for that. And some people who listen to Dorking Out go into that group as well. And talk about dorking out, which I think you're welcome to do. I think we're
Yes,
fine with
absolutely.
that. Yeah, so please. You can find me at thesoniashow.com and The Sonia Show on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to make a request, we take requests here. You could tag us on Twitter at Dorking Out Show, or you could email us at dorkingoutShow@gmail.com. And if you want, we could send you some stickers. We have some really cute stickers, and we're about to have some new stickers with our new logo. I'm going to make that happen. I promise. And if you could give us a review on Apple Podcasts, that would be very, very helpful. It helps us find our people. And you want us to find our people, please.
Right?
Thanks for talking about trading places with me.
Changing Rooms is one of my favorite movies ever.
I love changing rooms, and I love trading spaces.
We should do an episode about that someday.
I actually didn't really watch Trading Spaces that much, but we could totally.
I was hooked.
We could totally do old TLC shows.
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh my God, we could do a whole bunch of what not to wears. Oh, okay, I'm gonna write this shit down. All right. Until then, I almost said don't be a creep.
Well.
Bye.